Welcome to the Clean Truth, where we like to call bullshit on the status quo. What is up? Welcome back to the Clean Truth. I'm Don. I'm your host. No Ben today. Ben is in South Florida enjoying the sun and the warm weather with his family, and we're stuck in North Carolina with the cold. I'm sure
Good for him.
I'm sure it's way colder where you're at.
I don't know. It's pretty chilly. I can turn my I don't know if you can see out there. It's snowing.
Holy shit. Nope.
So, yeah.
Well, we usually do a weekly ball busting, Josh, before every episode. 9 times out of 10, it goes directly to Ben, but without him here, I don't have anybody's balls to bust, so we're going to skip that one. Yeah.
You can bust away.
Yeah. I do always take a quick second to thank our friends at Monster Energy and Reign. They keep us pretty caffeinated here at the office, and they're great partners to our brand with all of our franchisees, along with our buddies at Extreme Outfitters in Jacksonville, North Carolina. If you're in the Carolinas, go check those guys out. If you're not, they do ship. Just extremeoutfitters.com. Josh, we always play a game at the beginning of every episode. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we have these cool little truth or dare cards. Obviously, we can't do any dares because we're sitting down and we're in 2 different states. But we always do one of the clean truths before we get going. So the one I picked for you, you get to answer it first. Is what's your hidden talent?
I don't know. I can flip my eyelids inside out. I don't know. I don't know if that's much of a talent. I can't sing. I can't dance. I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, I know. I guess I know one. I'm awful handy on on heavy equipment, backhoes and excavators and that. People probably don't know that about me, but I grew up doing that. I can do, like, I did all the excavation on my house, septic system, like all that. I'm awful handy on equipment. So it's not as gross as flipping your eyelids inside out.
That's a weird talent. I think mine would be I have a weird hearing issue. So, like, I'm very deaf in my right ear, but it's weird if Yvonne and I are in a restaurant, I can hear a conversation at a table that's like 3 tables away, and I can barely hear. If she's in front of me and it's loud, I got to ask her like 3 times because I can't really hear close up.
Oh, really?
But I can hear things far away in my left ear better than, it's weird. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Kind of
That's
a weird thing.
I had a buddy in high school that was, well, actually not in high school. He was our basketball coach. He was blind in his left eye, but not in his right eye. And but he was a phenomenal basketball player. But every now and then you could get him because you could sneak up on his left side and he wouldn't see it coming. But when he would play basketball, he was always doing this with his head because he had no vision out of that left side. But he was so damn good that he tried to walk onto the University of Kentucky basketball team and almost made it.
Shit.
Pretty high level player for being blind in one eye. Yeah.
I had a superintendent when I was a carpenter, and same thing. He had like a glass eye, so he was completely blind in one eye.
Yeah.
But he was that guy that could ride down the street in a subdivision and tell if your ridge boards on a roof were like a half an inch, out of whack.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to introduce you here. Today we got a pretty cool guest, Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company. Josh, is Josh Smith Knives? I'm actually going to let you explain this but I always wanted to ask you, like, that is for all the custom stuff that you do, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't plan my sweatshirt well for being on camera, but
that's okay.
Yeah, it's Josh Smith. It's just my that was my name of my knife business from the time I was a kid. The reason I named my other business different was just so we can keep the two separate. You know, if someone buys a Josh Smith knife, that's 100% custom made by me, nobody else working on it.
Nice.
Versus Montana Knife Company, I have employees and obviously design them and work on a lot of them, but not all of them.
So for the people that are listening to the show, I met Josh at Winter Strong this past year, the Sornex event we've talked about on the podcast a million times. And man, I was a fan right off the bat, just because after meeting you and then seeing your brand and what you do, and more importantly how you do it. You know, I've bought knives before, but you know, hearing Bert talk about you and what you guys do, I wanted to have you on the show for a long time. So, just tell everybody about your background. I mean, I know like I said, I met you at Winter Strong. You started out with Josh Smith Knives, and then the whole story with you and Brandon starting the Montana Knife Company. I think that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of goes back, clear back to when I was a kid. I was 11 years old, playing Little League Baseball, and my Little League Baseball coach would bring his hunting knives to practice and show the kids and parents, mostly the parents, you know, the dads around that are hunters and stuff. And I was just super interested in that, thought it was really cool. And so he invited me up to his shop to build a knife. Actually, my parents bought me one of his knives for Christmas that year. And right after Christmas, he invited me up to come up and make my own knife. And I did that. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't know if he planned on it going much further than that, but I probably pestered him to keep coming up there. And I made a couple more knives at his shop. And, you know, he basically said, well, if you want to be a knife maker, you got to do it at your own house, which was probably his way of getting rid of a kid. And so I had a lawn mowing business, and I also worked in my parents' excavation business. So, you know, I started taking the money that I was making doing that stuff, and I bought kind of a crappy belt grinder and a few small hand tools and stuff, and I started making them in my dad's shop. My dad's pretty clean, and his shop it's more for mechanicking and stuff, and it's not really for grinding and making a bunch of dirt and dust. And I was doing so much of it that he finally said, all right, you got to get out of my shop. So he enclosed a lean-to out in a shed that we had and kind of moved my stuff out there in my own little space. And honestly, just kind of kept going after it. By the time I graduated high school, had been super serious with it. At that point, I basically had a full-on knife shop, as nice as there's as much equipment in it as a lot of knife makers had, you know. So, yeah, I mean, I did that full-time for 10 years after high school. A couple little things in between there before that, but went full-time at that for 10 years. And then, you know, the economy of 08, 09, that time period kind of started happening. And I was making really high-end custom art knives at that point, you know, anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 a piece. And when the economy started going south and we started heading into that recession, I started seeing high-end knife orders were starting to go away a little bit, or people wanted to at least wait. And I had 4 young kids, was worried about being able to continue making a living doing that. And I had an opportunity to go take a job for a local utility here. I actually started out on the gas side. I was going to be a welder for them, but I got a job operating equipment for them, digging up gas lines. And, you know, it was a great opportunity. I had, you know, benefits and 401k and, you know, 8 to 4:30. I'd been used to being self-employed, and basically every waking moment you felt like you had to be working. So that was definitely a change. It was really nice. And I ended up actually transitioning over to the electric side pretty quickly, because I saw the age of the men in that room were old on the electric side, and they were all going to be retiring. And so I got an apprenticeship with them, and 5 years later became a journeyman lineman. So just kind of keep going here. I was a journeyman lineman for the next 5 or 6 years. And in that meantime, I had met my new wife, and I always had this dream of this knife company. If I went back to making knives again full time, I wanted to do it differently. And I've always had a dream of having this production knife company. I actually bought the name or registered the name with the state of Montana when I was 19, called Montana Knife Company. And it was always in my plan, my someday plan. And with the encouragement of my wife, actually the winter strong before I met you, I brought some prototypes out, kind of showed them around. And you know how that group is. Everyone was super supportive and like, we're behind you. And so that summer I launched my website, met Brandon, hired him. And then later on in the year, we became partners in it. And then we launched that. And frankly, it kind of took off. And then last December, almost a year ago to today, it was December 30th of last year, I quit my lineman job. So not quite a year ago. Quit my lineman job, went full time with Montana Knife Company. And at that point, that's when Brandon and I just were like full steam ahead. And
That's
it kind
awesome.
of exploded this whole last year. It just kind of exploded. So that's kind of an overall rundown of all of it.
Sure. So that I didn't know that. So you ran the knife company for, you said 10 years before you went and took a full-time job with somebody else. I thought you did all of that before you started the knife company. That's awesome.
No, it was Josh Smith Knives before. I didn't start Montana Knife Company until last year, but I just was doing the customs under Josh Smith Knives from the time I was about 21 to the time I was 30. I was just a full-time custom knife maker. Those knives are one of a kind art pieces basically. It's hard because it's really high end. You can't really hire much for help because everyone expects you personally to be the one making it. It'd be like a piece of artwork from a famous painter and then finding out that his apprentice painted it.
Yeah.
People don't want that,
Sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of the gist of what we had going there.
So how did you and Brandon meet? How did Brandon come into the equation with Montana Knife Company?
So through Winter Strong, when I was down there, not last year, but the year before, when I was showing those prototypes around, their marketing guys, their content guys, I was talking to them and I was like, hey, I need to find a photographer to take some pictures for me and build a website and kind of do some content stuff. And I was asking if they had any connections, and they're like, actually there is a guy in Montana that they knew through kind of their former jobs before they had ever worked at Sornex. So they put me in touch with him. He lives about 2 hours north of me. So he came down, he shot some photos, did some content, and then I hired him to build our website. As we were working together on that stuff, I started realizing that he was extremely talented and knowledgeable beyond taking pictures, but also like into the whole marketing side of it,
He's a pretty talented dude, man. His pictures are insane.
Yeah. And so really that fall, I had really realized like, if I'm going to build a brand like I want to, I need that guy anyway, but I really couldn't afford to pay him at that point, like what it would have taken. So I offered him partnership in the company. I think he was starting to also see like the potential it had. And, so the two of us just kind of teamed up and then frankly, from that point on, it's been just gangbusters.
That's awesome. I think the other thing that I think is really cool with your company is, and you do a good job of sharing it also, that's a family-run business.
Yeah.
Your wife and kids are in there helping, and I mean, I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool this fall. My wife quit her job. Frankly, that was we were maybe a little ahead of when we needed to hire her, but she was a school teacher, and the school system she worked in was coming out of summer, going into the new school year this fall, and they came out and told them they were all going to have to wear masks every day at work for COVID. And she was just like, she was like, I'm over it. I can't do it. And so we thought we could hire, we did. And then thank God we did, because then the next couple months just got busier and busier. And it became evident that we actually really needed that position. But it's really cool to have her working alongside of me, taking care of things. And then, my 4 kids, they come out to the shop and fill in a little bit, do some work, bead blast, package stuff. It's really cool. My little girl, she loves to package up everybody's hats and shirts they buy, and assemble knives. My older daughters have tied a ton of our paracord wrap knives, and it's really neat. And I think they're starting to see like, wow, this is actually like real.
Sure.
Because in the beginning, I don't think they realized what we were trying to build, and they didn't see it coming,
I think there's a ton of value in teaching them. I wrote down in my notes here, old school ethics, old school work ethics that I wish happened more often. I mean, getting kids involved at a young age. I mean, you can't child labor or things like that. I'm not saying put them to work, but when you're a close family run business like that, I think it's important for them to see that. I know our girls did with us, and that was really cool.
It's what I grew up knowing. It's really honestly how I became successful at doing what I did was, by working in my parents' business, I then had money in my bank account, which then allowed me to buy a belt sander, which allowed me to chase the passion I wanted to. I worked with my dad all through high school. It's funny you say that about child labor. My parents were actually turned in for child labor laws when I was in, I think, junior high, or maybe somewhere, I think I was about junior high age. They got a letter from the state that we had been turned in by somebody for child labor laws. And we all thought it was funny because, I worked a lot of hours as a kid in the summer in Montana. When you're in the excavation world, it's like being a farmer. If the sun's shining, you're working. And I was working a ton of hours in the summer, but my parents were paying me well. And I loved it. I mean, I'm here. I am a junior high kid. My dad had me at a gravel pit running a screening plant by myself, like entirely for 12 hours a day, loading it with tobacco and doing all that. And I had a blast at it. They weren't making me do it. They if I had not wanted to, they probably still would have made me, but they didn't make me. And we just basically ignored it and it went away. But I really think that, it's one thing to work your kids to death and not reward them and not,
Sure.
Teach them that if you work hard, there's good results at the end of that. I did plenty of free stuff when I was a kid, like we all, I'm sure, did. But, when my kids come out and work in the knife company stuff, they fill out a time ticket like every other employee, and they get paid just like every other employee. It's not, free child labor.
That's awesome. We did the same thing with our girls early on when we were living in Illinois with the restaurant that we had there. Gracie, the youngest one, I think at the time she might have been 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And we were always worried about that. We were always worried about getting turned in, because one of the things that she loved doing on the weekends when she was with us, she would want to come to the restaurant. And at the time, our model was just a little bit different. It wasn't like a fast casual like you have now. The second one that we had was full service. So we had like 4 or 5 girls that would rotate shifts and wait tables and stuff. And it was usually 2 girls at a time per shift would wait tables in the dining room. Well, Gracie loved to come in and like put an apron on and run around to the tables and talk to all the customers. And then all of the girls would use these styrofoam cups, and they would decorate them with their names on them and draw all kinds of doodling and stuff on them. Well, of course, monkey see, monkey do. Gracie had to have her own little tip cup. And I swear that 8-year-old girl made more tips than our waitresses did.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, I mean, she would kill it in tips on the weekends. And then, she's 8 years old, so she's running around the dining room with like tortilla chips, like from the tortilla chips that we had. She's eating chips, talking to customers, and they would throw money at her.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the afternoon, she'd be so wore out. We had a little break room in the back that they could hang out and watch movies in. She would go back there and fall asleep and leave that entire cup of money sitting on the counter and completely forget about it. It was funniest thing.
That's funny. Yeah, my wife actually grew up, her parents owned a restaurant, and she grew up, same thing, waitressing and, washing dishes and doing all that stuff. And that was just, I mean, it was just part of the deal. Like both her parents were working in that restaurant. That's what the family did, was they worked in the restaurant, and she loved it. But I also think that's part of why my wife's so outgoing and can talk to people. And I'm guessing your daughter is the same way. I've never met her, but when you're a young kid and you are in that position to have to talk to people, it's really great training for no matter what they do someday. Sure. Same with me. I mean, I was traveling to knife shows trying to sell knives starting when I was 13, 14, all the way through high school. I was traveling to several shows a year, standing behind a table trying to sell knives to people. So, it forces you to have to communicate with strangers, talk to people.
That was a skill I learned late. I didn't even learn it until, I got in the restaurant business, because I was a carpenter for 30, till I was 30 some years old. So being in construction, you don't deal with the public. And of course, it's the opposite. You know what I mean? So I was really, really weird with customer interactions the first couple of years we were in this business, and to a fault, to where like we would get like negative reviews because I would be the guy at the counter and I wouldn't be very personable, but it was just, I didn't know how to do that. You know what I mean? It was a weird skill I hadn't developed yet. So just got weird.
I honestly think there's several things I think missing from public schools right now, but being able to communicate with people, as much as kids hate to do public speaking stuff, I think it should be more of a requirement. Like, I know every single kid pretty much would hate doing it, but in the end, it'd probably be more important than the calculus they're learning.
Nope,
I don't care what you're in, unless you are just sitting there framing houses and not talking to anybody. But like, even in doing that, whether it's talking to your bosses or talking to other employees, there should be a lot more public speaking stuff in high school, I feel like.
Do they still do the work co-op stuff? Because I know I did that.
I think it's school dependent. Our kids do some of that stuff here. I think it's kind of school dependent about what programs they have available. I just talked to 2 different high schools in the last 2 weeks, gave them a talk to their high school, like juniors and seniors, about life after graduating and the whole idea of going to college, not going to college. But when I graduated, it was, only the dumb kids don't go to college. Like, everybody has to go to college to succeed. And I think that pendulum's definitely swung a bit where, college, and like I told those kids, I was hesitant because I don't want to tell them not to go to college. If that's what they need to do, that's great. But, a lot of those kids, if framing houses is what they want to do after school and they can go get a job doing it, good for you. Go do that, versus building up a bunch of debt, and the whole apprenticeship stuff like I went through as a lineman, or if you're an electrician or a plumber, a lot of opportunities for kids out there that I don't think necessarily a lot of these kids know about.
No, I've mentioned this maybe on this podcast a few times lately, and then I know in a million different conversations outside, that any young person in high school or just out of high school now that is willing to get into the trades in the next few years is going to get paid, and paid very well, because the percentage of young people wanting to get into those trades and do those jobs is almost non-existent. None of them want to do it anymore.
When I got my job at the power company in 2010, I think 120 people applied for that one job.
Yeah.
And now they're begging for people.
Yep.
It's crazy how much it's changed. And it's a good paying job. It's crazy.
My brother is still a union carpenter in St. Louis. He's a journeyman trim carpenter there, and every time I talk to him, it's the same story, that they can't find enough guys that want to stay there and work and actually work every day. And then the ones that do, they have a hard time passing a drug test. They can't get them to pass a drug test long enough to keep them working. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing. Whereas when I was in the union as a journeyman carpenter 15 years ago, same thing. Like, you couldn't buy a job somewhere. Like, there were so many people trying to get those jobs and now they can't keep them. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate with MKC so far. I started off just kind of lightning in the bottle with 2 super young kids that are 19 and 20, girl and a boy, that are both working for me, that have been fantastic. And then we just hired a new guy really started just today, frankly. That's going to be great. He's a veteran, going to be really good. And, it's super important for us to keep growing and also it's important to have that good vibe in the shop where, you can add one wrong person into a team and changes the whole dynamic, changes, the production output of everyone. So, so far been really lucky with what we've had for help.
You were just talking a second ago about speaking to kids in schools and stuff. Is that something you do all the time?
No, it's just something that kind of started. It was kind of weird. Two different high schools asked me to do it. I drove up. The first one was my old high school I graduated at. I actually drove up there and just did it in person. The other one was just a high school out in eastern Montana that got a hold of me to do it. So it's really cool that they did that, and I hope more teachers will do stuff like that for that, even freshmen, sophomore. Like, I think one of my biggest problems when I was in school was not understanding how some of what I was doing was going to relate to real life. Why are we doing this particular math? Like, I told them I hated math, but when I got my apprenticeship as a lineman, and I interviewed for it. Basically, was said the job's yours. However, you have to pass a math test, and they hand you basically it's everything up to basic algebra. And I hadn't actually done that, basic algebra for a while. So I went and bought math and kind of freshened up on some of it just to pass that test. But those boys, like, you might not ever just calculate. But, for example, like Pythagoras theorem, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's how we figured out how long to make a guy wire for a power line, for a power pole. Is figuring out the length of a triangle. Like, if they would have it would be nice if teachers, I think, would have more people in to kind of show some of these kids what they're doing and why they're going to do it. Writing, for example, people in business write all the time now. You're writing an Instagram post probably every day. Mm-hmm. If you're a terrible writer, which I was not a good writer, had a bad attitude kind of about, like, why are we writing this? Well, now I'm trying to explain to my son and my kids, like, no matter what business you're going to have someday, if you're going to own it, you're going to probably write stuff, Yeah. And then just exposing those kids for the kids that aren't going to go to college, to all the different careers that are out there. I didn't know about the lineman career when I was in high school. And it sounds funny because our local power guy was like my second dad. Like, I knew he was the power guy, but nobody ever really told me what he did. He just kept the power on, but I didn't know how cool that job was.
Sure.
And that you could make $100,000 a year doing it.
Right.
You walk in and tell a junior in high school or senior in high school, you can go run backhoes and climb power poles and touch power lines while they're on. Sign me up. Sounds fun.
That's something, man, I've always thought that was cool. I would like to get into doing more of, just to get better at it, because I am not good at it. I would say that I'm a below average speaker, and I always make a joke about it. Every event that we do for our franchise company, if I have to get up in front of a group of people, that's the very first thing I preface. Like, listen, public speaking is not my gig. It's not my wheelhouse. Sometimes even on this podcast, I get a little tongue-tied because I'm trying to get the wires connected in the right way. No pun intended. But I would like to do more of that for the reasons that you mentioned, kind of articulating the things that they're learning and trying to get them to understand that there is a place for some of it. And I wish that some of the stuff that I know that they don't teach, according to my daughter, I know they don't teach it, like just basic economics.
100%.
They don't teach any of that in high school anymore. Like, they don't, and I know for many reasons, they don't have to. Like, one of the things I've been trying to work with our youngest daughter on is a budget. Budgeting her own finances. They're not taught that in school anymore, which is absolutely absurd to me. I'm baffled, and I can't understand why.
My daughter took last year as a junior, she took a basic personal finance class in high school. And you're right, not every school offers it. And frankly, I think that should actually be a 2-year program. I think you should have basic personal finance, and then her senior year right now, I think you should have more advanced personal finance along with basic business finance for kids that want to start a business. How do you start a business? And the teacher that had me come up to Lincoln and speak to her students, they're actually, I told them I couldn't be happier that they were doing it. They were doing a program where they had to come up with an idea of a business they wanted to start, a business plan. They had to write a business plan. They had to figure out how they're going to borrow money. They had to come up with all this, how they're going to market it, the whole 9 yards. And then they're going to go to a conference over in another city where they present all their ideas. And one kid in that whole entire deal, one of their projects is actually going to get picked up and fully funded.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic, but it's making those kids all go through the process of, okay, let's say you only have $1,000. How are you going to start your little business? What are you going to do? And honestly, a lot of the marketing that Brandon's done, that we've done, we did with $0. Like, we still to this day have not bought a single ad. Giving product away, giving it to the right people, shooting your own photography, doing your own Instagram, like sending out your own emails, like all that stuff. And granted, Brandon has a really good background and all that, but even if I was doing it myself, even less professionally, I still would have had some success, and you could grow it.
Sure.
Like Brandon says, kind of that guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, well, we don't have the budget of, Yeti coolers. So how are we going to do it? And there's a lot of stuff that a guy like that could go talk to a high school class and say, okay, you have $0 for your marketing budget. What are you going to do?
Absolutely.
And now we're getting in a position where we have money for a marketing business. And so once we have more knives available, now Brandon can start to really turn on some of the other stuff he wants to do now that we actually have a budget.
Yeah.
Last year the budget was $0. So that's what you have to work with,
So that brings me to a good question, kind of switching gears for a second. Have you guys had any struggles with like online ad spend with the business that you're in? Like it being, I guess censored is a good word, and not wanting to, I guess not necessarily you not wanting to, the platform's not allowing you to market, knives and hunting knives and things like that. I know the gun industry goes through it. I know that, but
yeah, we're not allowed to buy an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad.
Really?
Yeah, because we make weapons. Our knives are weapons, so we can't advertise. We can't boost a post, even if it's a post, even if it's a cutting board or a shirt. Like we can't buy a Facebook or an Instagram ad for it. So yeah, that's kind of that whole. We have to figure out a way to do it a little bit more creatively. That's why the giveaway stuff you've seen us do, workaround stuff where now we're trying to get, people that are following us to share our stuff for their friends to see.
Sure.
Maybe try and win a watch or a knife or something, because we can't just go spend a certain amount of dollars and run an ad. And we've definitely been, kind of shadow banned a little bit for sure. It was just the other day I was trying to find my own company on Instagram, and I typed out Montana Knife Company, everything but the Y, and it wouldn't. It was like trying to guess everything else but that, and just finally put the Y in, and there it is. But honestly, there's like, I get frustrated with it at times, but there's nothing we can really do about it. So we just drive forward, nothing we can really do to change it.
That's absolutely crazy. So what are some of the other outlets that you have to market on if you don't have social media? I know that's a stupid question, but 90% of most businesses out there, their major driving force of all of their ad spends everywhere is on social media.
Yeah, we're heavy. I mean, we're heavy on social media. But that being said, Brandon has made a big commitment to collecting and gathering email addresses So that way, if we got shut down with Instagram for some reason, we'd have the ability to reach out with Instagram or with email and tell people where we're at next or whatever. And then also text message, gathering text messages so we can send out a text
Sure.
saying when something's available or whatever. We really, we send a fair amount of emails out, but we really don't hit people hard with the texts. The texts are really only for when we're announcing like, hey, here's a time for a knife drop. People really like that. As far as outside advertising dollars right now, we actually just put a billboard up here locally, just along the interstate. I don't anticipate that being a big thing, but really, it's paying other photographers to take pictures of our work and pushing the stuff through the social channels right now. Until that's not available, that's what we're hitting hard. Now, I think Brandon has some other tricks up his sleeve. Frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to spend a lot of money for advertising right now when our website's sold out.
Right.
Once we have knives available, we'll start to push that kind of stuff harder. Brandon's talked about tweaking the website and doing some things to the landing page that maybe we can help avoid some of the, the scrubbing technology from the social medias and stuff, to where we could maybe get around some of the rules that they have. But again, until we reach a point where we're starting to have knives in stock, it doesn't make sense to put a lot of effort into that just yet. But to me, that's so important right now, just building relationships with other brands and people.
Absolutely.
Especially
the network that you and I share, we have a lot of the same similar friends. It's really good, really beneficial.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Do you ever see like publications coming back? And I know this is going to sound weird, but like, Black Rifle Coffee, they have their own little published little newsletter. Coffee or Die. And then like Field Ethos Journal, they're getting really big. Some of these smaller publications are starting to come back. I'm starting to see them more and more and more. I know we're getting ready to do one. Just a small little like 12, 15 pager, once a quarter or whatever, that we're going to send out to all of our restaurants that, just to have something for somebody to hold and read. I think is really cool that those are starting to come back.
I do. And I think, for example, I don't know if you got it, but I got I think it was around hunting season or right before hunting season, got a catalog from Stone Glacier for Stone Glacier packs.
I get them for all of them, really.
Like really nice, like really nicely done, high quality images, high quality paper, that whole 9 yards. It does sound weird, but like kids that are 19, 20 years old, that's not really something that they're used to. Like I remember like I just remember sitting and waiting for the Cabela's catalog to come when I was in high school. Like it was a big deal. But I think as far as publications go, I think there's definitely going to be some. I don't think there will be as many as there were obviously before, but I think some of those places like a Fieldcraft Survival or a Field Ethos, or like you say, the Black Rifle magazine is absolutely beautiful, and the writing in it, that the stories that they cover and what they talk about. I think those are going to be the magazines where people start to receive magazines with actual articles in there with great information.
Sure.
That they covered our veterans event we did up here in August. They sent a writer up to it, and she did a fantastic job.
I think it's awesome, man. I can't wait to see more of them come out, especially in the different things that I enjoy looking at and reading. I don't really, I don't collect baseball cards that much anymore, but Beckett, the old Beckett magazines. Yeah. We couldn't wait for those to come out. So.
Oh yeah.
Baseball cards.
I had those things all marked up. I remember the Beckett's for sure. Yeah, and I also think I was actually just thinking about this last night. Last night I had a headache, and I started realizing like how much I had looked at my phone.
Yeah.
Yesterday with everything I was doing, and to sit down when there's a football game on or something and reach over and just grab a magazine and flip through it instead of staring at a screen. Like, I think that's the other part of it. Like, I'm actually lucky. Well, here lately, a lot of my day has been spent looking at the computer, but generally I'm in the kind of business where I'm not on a computer all day. You know, carpenter's not on a computer all day, but I do feel for the guys like Brandon who are in marketing and that stuff. They stare at a computer or a phone or a tablet all day. I would have to imagine when they come home at night, it would be refreshing to grab a catalog and look through a Stone Glacier catalog or a Sornex catalog or something, or you know, read a magazine
I agree.
about hunting articles or fitness or whatever, you know.
I do the same thing. I do it all the time here at the office. Everybody kind of gives me shit about it, Scott being one of them. He's sitting across the table from me. I'll go sit in their office for 10, 15 minutes at a time because I'm sitting, you can't see it, it's behind me, but I'm looking at a big monitor that sits on my desk, and I'm good for 45 minutes max staring at this thing. And then I start to get a headache, and I have to get up and walk away. And I even have
Yeah.
the blue light glasses, the whole 9 yards. So I agree.
Yeah.
And then I even got to a point where now I set time limits on the apps on my phone. So on
Really?
on Instagram, when I hit 2 hours a day, it'll alert my phone and it'll actually shut it off if I don't override it.
Yeah.
Because I was telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know how to not have my screen time go into infinity if I don't just set a
Right.
time limit on it. And when I'm done, man. So I try to limit it now to where I'm not
Right.
staring at it all day. But
Yeah, and especially as much as I've been on the computer lately with trying to figure out a lot of what we're doing, getting ready to build a building and just a bunch of different stuff that's involving a lot of computer and phone work. And um, I'm the same way. Luckily, I can take a break and go out in the shop and do something. And um, I don't know how people do it that are on here 8, 10 hours a day nonstop, you know.
so talk to me about the dynamic. You know, you said you and your wife were a husband-wife team. I know a little bit about that. So
Yeah.
so talk about that dynamic with you guys because when I was on Scott's podcast the other day with Volkortson, he asked me about that and he asked me some of the tricks that we have to not want to rip each other's heads off. So I was curious if you and your wife had a similar thing going where you have different tricks that you use to keep you guys from tearing each other apart during the day.
You know, right now I'd say it's been working really well, but we're new at it. We're in like the honeymoon phase of it because it really only started in August. So, you know, there's been a few moments where it's just, you know, more of like learning to communicate and stuff about, you know, a lot of things I have going through my head. Then I think I told her something. So just being better about communicating. Honestly, I'm still out in my shop quite a bit. She's kind of working in the house. That's where a lot of our merchandise is until we get this new building. So we still have a little separation. We tend to get along really, really good and have good communication in general anyway. And she's not a real combative person. So if I start getting on her about doing this or that or whatever, she's pretty good about just kind of doing it. But if I'm being a real asshole, she'll also tell me like, hey, you're being an asshole. But you know, it's actually interesting. We've talked a little bit. We haven't really set much for parameters. Because it was my big fear for sure hiring her.
Sure.
About like I told her, I'm like, I will fire you and you'll go back to work before I let this like cost us our marriage. You know, working together. So that was one thing we came to an agreement in the beginning on is like if it's not working, it's better for her to go and get a job before it ends up costing us because it's not worth that, you know.
No, absolutely.
But we're nothing anywhere near that as far as issues. But it's more of a, and you know what it's like when you own your own business, you wake up in the morning and there's business waiting on your phone, and then there's business on your phone or on your computer 24/7. And there's been a couple times where I've walked out. She usually gets up about 10 to 5 in the morning or 5 in the morning, and I walk out and she's like answering business emails. And I'm like, hey, like, go work out, go do your thing in the gym, take a couple hours before, like, I think sometimes like balancing when to shut it off.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
feel like, but if there's like emails to answer, because she handles all our responses back to customers, she'll be printing orders at 9:30 at night and down packaging them. And I'm like, hey, those aren't going out until tomorrow. They don't be in the mailbox until tomorrow at 4. Like, settle down.
No, absolutely.
Because I don't want her to get burned out with it all. But that being said, it's also great because it is something personal with the kids. Some of them know the day they need to handle. It's nice because you can take a break for 2 hours at 1 o'clock and go do something with them. So it's just a balancing act for sure, as you know, because it would be easy to just work 20 hours a day.
We're guilty of
You
it
know,
still, man. We've been doing it. Her and I have been in business together for 10 plus years now, and we still battle with it. The one constant that I tell people all the time is we have our morning coffee, and it sounds absurd, but that 6 to 8 window there, nobody screws with.
yeah,
We don't work. We don't answer emails. We don't do anything. You know, we've been getting a lot better now and more consistent about trying to do something physical together, like our cardio or something. We used to work out in the mornings, and then we've just kind of gotten different schedules. But that little 2 hour window there, we don't do anything. We don't answer the phone. I mean, unless it's an emergency, of course. But,
yeah.
and then the one thing that we still struggle with is the evening, when we come
Mm-mm.
home because we don't really, clock out per se. So
Right.
where do you draw the line where you're still answering your phone or picking up the phone while you're watching TV and you open that email and then next thing you know you're 5 emails deep and it's 9 o'clock and you're like, damn it, what am I doing?
Right.
we still
Yeah.
battle with that.
It's kind of the life though that I grew up with because in the excavation business, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and then she did all the books for my dad's business and he wouldn't come home until 6, 7, 8 at night in the summer and then he'd sit there at night and do his book work, paperwork and basically have to tell her what he did during the day to bill it all out. And I still remember them in the summer working late at night all the time. Uh, just there was no cell phone service. There were no phones back then, as far as like her knowing what was going on during the day. And so, part of that is just running your own business. Like we're
Sure.
not. I had the clock out job, the corporate clock out. She had that with being probably less so with being a school teacher. She had more stuff she brought home as a lineman. Clock out at 4:30, come home and it's over. But um, there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. We're building something really, really cool together. And frankly, we enjoy what we do. And I'm sure you guys are the same way. So when you love what you do, it doesn't seem so bad.
No, absolutely.
But you definitely have to set some parameters on it. Cause even if you love it, it's still like you find that like, holy cow, that's all we talk about
Hmm.
is work.
We've done that.
Where that wasn't the case. I'd come home from my lineman job, you talk for 10 minutes about your day, and the rest of the night was whatever.
Yeah, we it wasn't. It was just not too long ago that we had to change that because we were still doing that. We would get to a point where even when we would go on a quote unquote date night, we would sit there and talk about work for 2 hours. And we're like, this is
Yeah,
absurd. Like, we have to have other things that we talk about. So we, just when I say not too long ago, less than a year ago, had to start making a conscious effort to not talk about work when we go out to eat together. Or, I mean, we had to make sure that we set time apart to enjoy different things other than work all the time, even though this company and this brand is our life and we enjoy it and we love doing it. So I mean, it's not, it's not a negative thing, but it gets to the point where you start to think like, shit, do we have anything else to talk about?
yeah, and I can see the day coming that we actually have different phones and don't associate any of the work accounts on them because you almost can't avoid it if we're driving to town to go have dinner together and we're talking in the car and an email comes in on her phone. You get a notification. You got three inboxes. You got your personal email and your work emails and all that stuff, and an email comes in and it's hey, this guy's package showed up and it's damaged and the nice. Well, she immediately, we both like immediately want to address that and fix that, or
For sure.
especially if it's somebody has like a real legit problem that we feel like needs addressed, um, which is good. And I think it's got us, really good reputation as a young company. but you know, I don't know how you get away from it unless you have work phones that don't go with you on a weekend. You know, if you go to a kid's basketball game or something, that stuff just doesn't go with you if it stays home. Because your work will find you on your device.
Yeah. I don't know if there's an answer for that one. I don't have it. I can tell you that. I mean,
Yeah.
we've tried all of the other gimmicks too, like, 7 p.m. we're going to shut our phones off, blah, blah, blah. We never do it, man. I mean,
No.
it's part of it. It's part of your life. So I don't have the answer there. I don't think there is one, to be honest with you.
It also is a great way, though, on the flip side, to get a hell of a lot of work done during the day and use your time wisely. If you're sitting waiting for a doctor appointment for 10 minutes, man,
For
sometimes
sure.
that's the best time to go through and blast through 5 or 6 emails. You
Yep.
know, when I'm out in my shop doing a lot of what I'm doing, a lot of that stuff gets neglected until like later on. I'm sitting in the chair at night and there's a football game on, and kids are doing whatever homework. It's like so that you know, it's really like you say, you can't set hard and fast rules like that because it just doesn't make sense.
We'll talk about the knives for a minute, and I have a note here about limited drops. And I don't know
Yeah.
if I wanted to ask you, and I think I know the answer, but I wanted to ask you just to make sure. Do you do the limited drops on purpose, or is it production, like you can only do so many at a time? Because to me, I think it's awesome. Like it's actually, I have a notification in my calendar because I want one of the new ones, and I'm going to let you talk about it. But you're getting ready to drop a new one, and I have a notification in my calendar. To me, I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. But is it because you just of the production that you do the limited drops, or are you trying to get to where you can have knives on the site all the time, or will you always do the limited drops like that?
Yeah, honestly, it's always been born from just that's how many knives we had, and then that's what we put up to sell. Uh, Obviously, it's turned into kind of this like marketing thing, but frankly, it still is that same reason. That's how many knives we have.
Sure.
It's not like we're creating or trying to create something. Even though that's kind of what it's turned into, is like this like crazy experience of like trying to get a knife. But no, the way it works is, I'll order, and this is months in advance, and this is part of why it's hard to get ahead of it. Is you know our steel comes in, and I need to get a certain amount of blades cut, and so you try to. Holy cow! Is my phone? Are you still there?
Yep.
Oh, that's weird. My damn phone rang. I don't know how this computer stuff all works, but you're. Can you still see me too?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can see.
That's weird. There we are. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
You went away when my phone rang. So anyway, I have to figure out like how many knives do we think we're going to sell? Well, especially as a brand new company, it's like, I don't know, a couple hundred, maybe so, and you can't afford to just order thousands of knives when you're not sure you can only sell a couple hundred. So it started off that way of like, let's get this many blades cut. Let's make those and try and sell those. And then we'll make some more. Well, man, those have sold so fast, and we started making more. And every time we started making more and more knives, but it's just never been enough. And we're not splitting these things up from the sense of like, hey, let's just make sure we sell out in 2 minutes. Like, frankly, you should see it, because my wife makes fun of me because I'm almost sick to my stomach every time a drop comes, because I'm like, oh, I don't know if they're going to sell, just because like we've been dropping 400 to 600 knives. We had a drop here a few weeks ago, 700 knives. It's not a small number. Like, that's a lot of people that have to be out there.
Oh,
on the
for
computer,
sure. Yeah.
So we do get that. People are like, what did you guys make? 10 or 12 knives? And it's like, no,
Yeah.
trust me. And then from a shop perspective too, is even if I ordered 5,000 blades of one design, like we're employee wise just don't have the capacity to handle that. Sure. It would be months before we came out with a drop. So it's, again, there's a balancing act of, do we drop 500 or 600 now, or do we wait another month and try and drop 1,000? So it helps with hiring people. We've hired another guy. We've got a couple more guys starting in the spring. we've started bringing more of our production process in-house, and we're going to really have a big change in that here in the spring. We're building a new building and buying CNC machines, and I've hired 2 more guys that are going to run that stuff. And hopefully we can start increasing or decreasing the time between drops and also increasing the numbers of blades, you know.
Man, I think what you're doing now is awesome. I think it's like you said it a second ago. It's almost part of the experience.
Yeah.
I know it was like that for me with the speed goats, and I missed them twice. Until you did the branded one for me and Ben, the custom one. I missed it twice, and then I missed the last one that you're doing. And I'm like, I gotta set a notification in my calendar because I'm not missing this one. I want this one really bad. So
yeah. No, I appreciate it. It's been crazy, but no, it's super cool, and it's really cool how many people are rooting for us and helping push our stuff and repping us. And a lot of our friends in our friend circle are just, I mean, you've experienced it, I'm sure, in your business. They're just super generous with reposting stuff and sharing things and buying stuff. And yeah, it's just incredible. I just can't even believe it's happening like it is, you know.
That's awesome, man. Well, Josh, thank you, man. I appreciate all your time today. This was awesome to get to know you a little bit better and share your brand with everybody that listens to us.
No, absolutely. So love what you guys do. Looking forward to seeing you here. It's going to be what, 6 weeks? Winter Strong.
Is it coming up that fast?
It's like
I just got the email the other day, but
beginning of February.
I know. I know we're supposed to help sponsor it this year, which I thought was like a huge honor for me.
That's awesome.
Coming last year and seeing it, and then Ricky reached out about doing a sponsorship for it, and I'm like, I don't even care. Just do it. Like, whatever. Send me a bill. I'm more than happy to do it. It's awesome.
That's exactly how I felt last year, because the first year I was at it, I brought prototypes to just tell people what this company was going to be and my idea. 3 months later, we built a website and launched it, and by February of last year, we were one of the sponsors. And so to go back there in 1 year and be a sponsor was really, really cool for sure. And same thing this year, like looking forward to being a sponsor of it and just helping however we can.
I'm going to make a knife this year, man. Either that or I'm jumping on a plane and coming out there to see you to make one.
Yeah, well, let's do both.
I didn't do it last year. I was so, man, by the time that nighttime rolled around, that night you guys were doing that, I was so blasted I could barely hold my eyes open. And I think Ben messed around and made one, and I went to bed like shortly after that. I couldn't even stay awake long enough. I was exhausted.
Yeah. No, it's a good time.
Cool.
It's probably the weekend I look forward to most in the whole year of all the like events and stuff we do. I mean, Total Archery Challenge is really fun, but it's in a different way.
Sure.
You know, Winter Strong's just, it's the people that make Winter Strong so cool.
Yeah.
You know.
Totally agree.
But yeah.
Well, share your website and your social media for everybody before we jump off of here.
Yeah, it's montanaknifecompany.com, at Montana Knife Company on our social stuff. My personal social media is at Josh Smith Knives. You know, you get a little more feel of like, I guess just my personal life, kids, 4-H animals, life in Montana, hunting. The Montana Knife Company stuff's a little more just geared towards the knife brand. But yeah, so that's pretty much where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you again. And guys, if you have not checked out Montana Knife Company, definitely do so. You're getting ready to do another drop. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, we're coming out with a brand new model, the Super Cub. It's called the Super Cub Drop Point. It's probably the biggest. Well, it's the biggest blade in our lineup, except for our big fleshing knife. Yeah, it's going to be like a good bushcraft type knife. Everything from field dressing animals to bushcraft work, and I'm super excited about it. It's a really nice blade. So yeah, check it out. Check it out on the social.
Awesome, man. Well, it's on my calendar. I know that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you again, and until next time.